Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice Radio. So today we need to carry on one of my very favourite series that I do on this channel, and that is free cards that are never going to be printed again. Now I will say, obviously this is not an exact science. I'm looking at trends in the Pokemon TCG, how cards were when they were out, what the game's looking like, etc. now, and trying to make predictions. Yes, occasionally I'm going to be wrong about these. That's okay. But you know what? I'm feeling kind of good about these ones we're talking about today. So let's start off with Professor's Letter. Now, this is one of those cards where, honestly, this all just comes from other cards that we've had revealed since. It really is as simple as that. Because you see, Professor's Letter is an item card that just says, search your deck for up to 2 basic energy cards, reveal them, and put them into your hand, and shuffle your deck. And this is one of those situations where you're just like, oh, that on the face of it, that doesn't sound like a terribly broken card. That sounds like a decent card. Sounds alright. Doesn't sound like a horrendously broken card. But this is one of those situations where you then look at other cards that have been printed since, and it all kind of starts to make sense. So take Letter of Encouragement from Obsidian Flames. Now, to be fair, this will let you search for 3 basic energy rather than 2, so it is better in that regard. But you can only use it if one of your Pokemon was knocked out during your opponent's last turn. Well, that's a huge downside. Like a gigantic downside. Now, it is knocked out during your opponent's turn. It doesn't matter how they were knocked out, whether it was damage from an attack or an ability or whatever. But that is a huge downside. That you get an extra basic energy, and that's lovely. But that is a huge downside, and it means that a lot of the time it's not going to work. And in decks where you can search for items easily enough, yes, it's alright. That'll do. But I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, as it stands, nah, this to me says the Professor's Letter isn't coming back. But I'll be honest with you, we can do even better than that. Because in the most recent set, Paradox Rift, we got Earthen Vessel. And Earthen Vessel is basically exactly the same card as Professor's Letter. The only difference is you have to discard a card from your hand. Other than that, it's exactly the same as Professor's Letter. But you've got to discard a card from your hand. And there's no way Pokemon are going to print a nerfed version of Professor's Letter, because let's face it, Earthen Vessel is just a worse version, and then also print Professor's Letter. That's a bit silly. Now, I will say that discard a card from your hand can actually work out, because remember in Paradox Rift, for instance, we got Professor Sada's Vitality that lets you attach a basic energy to each of 2 of your ancient Pokemon from the discard pile. So there are times you will want to discard cards from your hand, so Earthen Vessel, you could see it as an upgrade rather than a downgrade. But as far as I'm concerned, when you look at cards like Earthen Vessel and to a lesser extent Letter of Encouragement, Professor's Letter just goes, okay, fine, it's not coming. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. But I thought what we do today is pick for different reasons, so if you want a card that is just not coming back because it's just plain too good, how about Skyfield Stadium? This is one of those where it's not necessarily that we've got other cards that have been released which make it look like it's not coming. Skyfield is just that gosh darn good. And Skyfield is one of those cards where it kind of feels like it came out, was amazing, and it's almost like Pokemon have gone, yeah, maybe we shouldn't have done that. Maybe we won't do that again. Because it's one of those cards that just hasn't come back. And it's never really been banned, and they haven't necessarily been printing nerfed versions of it. It's just they've gone, nah, you know what? Let's not have that again. It's a stadium card that says each player can have 8 Pokemon on his or her bench. And obviously, initially, it was made for a Quasar EX. There was a super duper obvious combo with, well, actually Mega Rayquaza EX, if we want to be pedantic. And I do. And what Mega Rayquaza EX did was 30 damage times the number of your bench Pokemon. So Skyfield let you have extra bench Pokemon, Rayquaza did damage based on your bench Pokemon, and then you actually had Shaman, which also drew a bunch of cards, and it was a whole thing, right? All came out in Roaring Skies, all very deliberate. But the problem with Skyfield is that is a card which is so easy to abuse. Oh, I need to give a shout out, by the way. Adagio Rose 6169 over on YouTube actually suggested this to me, and as soon as they mentioned it, I was like, you know what, I might put that in the next video. That's a fantastic idea, so shout out to them for the suggestion. And the thing about Skyfield is there's just too much around. Like, take something, I mean, at the moment we've got, say, Iron Valiant with Entei. That is a deck which is really, really good at the moment. It was doing well in Stuttgart this past weekend. It's a legit new deck from Paradox Rift. Now imagine if that deck had Skyfield Stadium. It'd be absurd. Because it plays Entei, which is another one of those that does extra damage based on the number of bench Pokemon you have. So it would be better in that regard. But one of the things I found playing this deck is that you've got 2 or 3 Iron Valiant. You've almost never got room for 4, which is really important because the ability says that when it moves from the bench to the active, you can put 2 damage counts on one of your opponent's Pokemon. And there are a whole bunch of 70 and HP Pokemon around right now, but the reality is it's just so difficult to try and get 4 of those in play, that even if you can draw into enough switching cards, you just can't use that ability 4 times during your turn. I think if we had Skyfield, I think you'd be able to. And then you'd have people dropping like 8 damage counters on one Pokemon every turn, or at least multiple times during the game, and then you'd have Entei going nuts. And this is just one example, right? This is one example of a deck that I think with Skyfield Stadium, or it's just actually called Skyfield, but it is a stadium. With Skyfield, this would go from, oh, that's pretty good, to why would they do this to us? And there are many cards. This is, like I say, one example. There have been many cards that do this. Doing damage depending on bench Pokemon is another thing that Pokemon just like throwing at us. And I think this is one of those situations where if Skyfield came back, the number of decks we could play legitimately would be narrowed. There would be a lot of decks that would essentially fall out of the meta. There would be decks like Iron Valiant that would all of a sudden just become way better. And it's just not worth it, frankly, ladies and gentlemen. It's not worth it. So I think this is one of those that we can safely say, at least for the time being, isn't coming back. Although, if you do want to see a card which gives a little, and it's not that strong, I'll give you. But if you want a card that gives some evidence that this isn't coming back, how about Eternatus V Max from Darkness Ablaze, as an example? Now, this actually did the same thing. It let you have 8 Pokemon on your bench, but only if you played all Darkness type, and it was only on Eternatus, so it couldn't be used by other decks. So this was the closest we've had to Skyfield since Skyfield, but it was really like only in an Eternatus deck, only if you're only playing Darkness Pokemon. They really narrowed down what you're allowed to do with it, and that seemed very deliberate. So there is some precedent for the fact we're not getting it. But the last one I want to talk about today, because I like doing these in threes, that seems like a good number. Something that just kind of happened several times and then just disappeared off the face of the earth. Eevee. Energy Evolution Eevee. Because you see, this was one of those things. This was not like a one-off card. It wasn't like we got this once and then we haven't seen it since. Energy Evolution Eevee was just kind of a thing. And we actually got it way back in Neo Discovery. Now, in Neo Discovery, it was when you attach an energy, flip a coin. If head, search your deck for a card that evolves from Eevee that is the same type as the energy you attached. And then attach that card to Eevee. This counts as evolving. So basically, when you attach fire energy, flip a coin to evolve into Flareon. That was good. But then we went a little bit further when we got to Unseen Forces. Because in Unseen Forces, we got the same card, but there was no coin flip. It was just attach an energy, search your deck for a card that evolves from Eevee, and evolve it. Okay, that was pretty good. But then we saw the same thing in Furious Fist. And then we saw the same thing in Sun and Moon. And to be fair, we did get a couple of alternate art reprints of the one from Sun and Moon, including a shiny version, but we never got this again. And Sun and Moon was a while ago at this stage. Like, really long ago at this stage. The Sun and Moon TCG came around in 2017. And really, it was February 2017, so near enough 7 years ago. And we've had that Eevee printed multiple times, and in the past 7 years, nothing. Absolutely nothing. And you've got to think there's a reason for this. But not only that, since then, they've kind of almost done this for Eevee. But, okay, let's take a look at the one from Astral Radiance, Resonant Evolution. Lovely so-so artwork on this one. Once during a turn, when you play a Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your other Eevee, you may search your deck for a card that evolves from this Pokemon and put it onto this Pokemon to evolve it. So basically, when you evolve an Eevee, then you can evolve all your Eevee, which is lovely. But it stops you doing the turn 1 play, which is obviously like the big thing with Energy Evolution Eevee, is the turn 1 play. You play an Eevee, and then you attach an energy, and then you go. Straight away, no messing. That's what makes it really good. It's been 7 years almost, and we just don't have it. And again, we've had Resonant Evolution, which it's not the same. Just to be perfectly clear, this is not the same. It is not even. This is not, to put it bluntly, it's not a fair trade. And for that reason, I do think Energy Evolution Eevee is done. Like, there was a weird thing with the Energy Evolution Eevee from Sun and Moon, where it looked like, and then they announced that it wasn't happening, but for a time it legitimately looked like it was being kept in the format by the McDonald's print. It was hilarious. There was literally just a print in McDonald's, and that was going to keep it in the metagame. Which was dumb, frankly. Absolutely silly. And then Pokemon were like, just to be clear, we're going to make sure that's not actually the case. It would be absolutely ridiculous, but it would also be kind of funny, honestly. And just because it's been a while, we had it for ages, then it went away, and it's been a while, I do think, unfortunately, we are at the stage where Energy Evolution Eevee is gone. We've had a weaker version of it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not the same. Right, there we go. That's what you need to know. Those are 3 cards that I don't think are coming back. Oh, and actually, I need to give a shout out for the Eevee, because this was suggested by Stephen Adams 8712. It was on my list, but they also suggested it in a YouTube video, so I didn't get the idea from them, but I still got the idea, and they suggested the same one, and I think that deserves a shout out. So shout out to them for selecting Eevee, because I thought that was a good call. And if you've got any cards that you don't think are going to be reprinted again for whatever reason, let me know in the comment section, and maybe I'll pop them in the next video and give some shout outs. For now, I want to know which cards you don't think are ever coming back, and I want to know what you think about these selections, so let me know in the comment section. Go nuts! Be nice! And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi. That's where we talk about Pokemon and a whole bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCGradio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, and all kinds of fun things. And get shoutouts on the channel, like the lovely Dark1313, who's been a supporter of ours for a while now, and is a very lovely person. So shout out to them for the support and the loveliness. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.